So you've put in the work to learn a few scales. You know the basic ideas behind soloing, but unless you're straight up copying licks from someone else, your solos just sound like you're walking up and down scales. Where's that creative magic that other players seem to be able to capture with the exact same shapes? And before you say it, no, the answer is not chord tones. So when you really break it down to its simplest form, soloing involves playing really a small handful of notes over a chord progression to play various melodies. And I think what a lot of players don't really get is how few notes you're actually using when you play. Take the pentatonic scale, for example. Even though this shape here contains 12 notes, I'm only actually playing 5. A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C. And even if I took this to its furthest degree and looked at all 5 pentatonic positions spread across the entire neck, every single one of these is just repeating A, C, D, E, G over and over, up or down in octaves. And these endlessly repeating notes are one of the things that really get you sounding scaly. So we're gonna start by adding a limitation. Physical limitations like this are a great way to force you into being more creative with less. So what I'd like to do is limit you to just the 3 highest strings. So only this part of the shape right here. We're playing C, D, E, G, A, and then repeating the C at the very end. Now, before we immediately start applying this new shape to music, we need to talk strategy, because even with these limitations, it's likely you're just going to default to moving up and down the smaller shape. We don't want that. So when it really comes down to it, creativity with a scale or shape mostly comes from comfort, where whichever shape you're using is so ingrained into your mind, into your body, that you stop seeing it as a linear path to travel forwards and backwards through. Instead, you're seeing that any note in the shape can come before or after any other note in the shape. Since most people practice scales in a linear order, your hand is going to naturally always try and make you go to the next note in the scale. This is the habit we need to break. So let's do a little exercise. All we're going to do is slowly play random notes from our little reduced scale shape. The only catch is that we can't play any notes that come directly before or after the note we just played. You can follow along with me, although the random notes you play will probably be different than mine, but you can also practice this along to any other backing track you want. I have several available for you, including this one that you can download for free in the description. All right, it doesn't matter which note you start on, it can be any one. Just make sure the note that follows is not the one that comes next in the scale or sequence. All right, we'll start here. And we're gonna go nice and slow. Speed is not important here, especially at the beginning as we're just getting used to it. And if you can go a little faster. Now, this exercise is something I really want you to spend some time on. I know it's a little bit boring, but we really need to redraw all those muscle memory and neural pathways. Again, keeping things very limited and compact for the time being. Now, it's time to start building melodies. So our next step is to look at the 4 main tools that we can use to turn a series of notes into a melody: repetition, rhythm, direction, and dynamics, which we will affectionately remember as R2D2. First up, repetition. Pretty straightforward. Sometimes simply playing a note more than once can really break things up. Next is rhythm. We don't want to play every note with the same rhythmic pattern. How boring is this? We want to keep the rhythm varied to create some interest. Direction is also pretty straightforward. We don't want to be traveling in one direction constantly. Sometimes we go up, sometimes we go down. Even if I play the scale as one linear path, just changing directions can add a lot. Our final tool is dynamics, which you can control by how hard or soft you play the note. We don't want every note to come through with the same velocity. This is what makes our instrument really feel alive. So rather than this, we want to be doing things more like this. And when you put repetition, rhythm, direction, and dynamics together when improvising, that's when the magic really starts to happen. Okay, so let's go back to our first exercise. We're going to use the same shape, but instead of skipping around to random notes, I want you to try applying the 4 tools we just talked about. You may not be able to do them all at once, but try your best to work on developing them all. All right, so we're just gonna freestyle with the shape a little bit, trying to implement those 4 tools as best we can. So here's a little repetition. Okay, nice. And then we wanna add maybe some rhythm, so make sure we're just changing it up as we go. Of course, something we are already kind of doing, which is direction. Right? Pretty simple to throw that in there. And then dynamics is the last one. And that's, again, something we're kind of already doing, but we're just kind of paying attention to how hard we hit the strings. And then the whole goal is just to kind of mix them all together. Again, we're just limiting ourselves to that small shape. Let's take things a little further. If you're familiar with my other lessons, you'll know how much I prefer to use the full 7-note major or minor scale over the pentatonic. So let's just add those 2 notes into our existing shape. We just have to include this note here and this note right here. So now our entire shape looks like this. Pretty simple. This just gives us a little more to work with while still only being limited to one cycle of the scale. And we can approach our little exercise the exact same way now using the major scale shape. So again, just paying attention to my 4 tools. You can already hear how those extra notes just give me some more melodic options, right? Now, the limitations you set for yourself are totally flexible. I'd recommend you start with what I suggested, but don't stop there. Try songs in different keys with different styles or even just different feels. You can also use a different chunk of the scale if you want. Feel free to limit yourself to just the lower strings or even give yourself the freedom to work with a larger scale shape if you feel ready. It's important to remember that whichever shape you decide to practice melody building with, that you spend time tracing it out and really getting comfortable with it first. Do that first exercise I showed you where you never play notes that are right next to each other. Only then, when you're comfortable with that, should you move on to the R2-D2 stuff. The next step is to widen the scale shape that you're using. So this usually means extending your scale onto the other strings or even using the entire scale shape. But you really want to be careful here because you can easily fall back into those old habits of just running up and down the scale. I think it's probably going to be best to just reintroduce one string at a time. Then spend a good amount of practice time with just those extra few notes before adding another. So if we're just doing the pentatonic, then adding these 2 notes on the D string. And now I do all my practice and exercises with this new slightly expanded shape. Once you're comfy with that, you'd add a little more and so on and so forth, always making sure that you're not just running up and down the scale. Remember, repetition, rhythm, direction, and dynamics. So there is one other thing I'd really recommend working on when it comes to building your melody making skills, and that is ear training. The better your ear gets, the better you'll be at being able to come up with ideas that sound good. If you've never done any real ear training before, I'd highly recommend my course, Listen and Play. It'll teach you how to start training your ear and building connections between what you hear and what your fingers are doing on the fretboard. I'll give you a 25% off code as well, so just enter the coupon code YouTube at checkout and you'll get that discount. And if you've got the basics of ear training down and you're more interested in improving your soloing skills, there's no better place than my other course, Soloing Made Simple. You can also use coupon code YouTube at checkout for 25% off that one as well. There'll be links to both of those courses at the top of the description. If you have any questions about anything we talked about in today's lesson, make sure you leave those down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.